Good evening. I'm James. This is the story of how I came to be here, or parts of it. 2 years ago, Su-Feh and I were making a duet for Natalie and myself. When a week before the premiere, Natalie was injured. We were rolling around on the floor together, trying very hard not to do contact, when the outside of my leg, my IT band, rolled onto the inside of Natalie's knee. For just a second. But in that second, Natalie was injured, or I had injured her. She seemed fine at the time, and so we kept rehearsing that day, but in the evening at home, her knee began to swell to the size and shape of a grapefruit. Well, we decided the best thing for her to do would be to go to the hospital, and so she did. I stayed home with our son Finn, and Natalie spent 5 hours in the emergency room to have a doctor tell her that she had hurt her knee. It turns out that in that second, a tiny piece of meniscus on the inside of Natalie's knee had torn off and was floating around in the fluid between the bones of her right knee. The doctor said that she wouldn't be dancing for a while. Su-Feh and I met the next day. We decided to continue working, and this is what we started working on. Socks. I'm going to be wearing socks for part of tonight's performance. I like these socks. They're mostly cotton, which is surprisingly hard to find nowadays. And they have a supportive strip right across the middle, which is quite nice. Su-Feh thinks that dancing in socks is like fucking in socks. But I think there are certain things only a man in socks can do. am James. I am James. I am James. And often, I find at this time of year, I develop this urge or need to dance the nutcracker. I've performed the nutcracker at least 300 times over the course of the last 25 years. I'm 36. That's 25 Decembers spent performing the nutcracker, 25 falls spent rehearsing the nutcracker. I am James. And often, at this time of year, I feel the very real urge or need to dance a nutcracker. The first time I danced the nutcracker, I was 10 years old. It was my second year at the National Ballet School in Toronto, 5,000 kilometers away from my family in Victoria, British Columbia. We would rehearse in the evenings and on the weekends in Studio A and B, and our rehearsals consisted mostly of us holding hands and skipping. And skipping for fucking ever. There were two things that we absolutely needed to know. The first was the music, and the second was where we needed to be in the music. I would take Ali by the waist and the hand, and together we'd skip down stage underneath the parents' arms. We'd get to the bottom, stop, look at each other, bow, look at the audience, bow. The second time I performed the nutcracker, it was a party scene, but this time I was Fritz, Claire's brother and the boy who breaks the nutcracker, but before he does, he stands in fifth position in the middle of the stage, his hands under his armpits, and he does a little dance. And everybody has to watch. He moves downstage, steals the nutcracker from Clara, goes up through the parrot and throws it. The third time I performed the nutcracker, I was the nutcracker boy. I would take Clara by the hand and lead her down stage. As the set behind me transformed, the tree grew. Rats and mice would come on stage to do battle with gingerbread men and soldiers. I would take Clara by the hand and lead her to safety in the corner. Eventually, the Rat King would come on, so I would take my sword and prepare to do battle. Of course, I was skipping. I would see the Rat King jump past him, land, look up into the ceiling, threw my sword into the lights, and in my 12-year-old brain, I imagined that this was what it was like to be a professional dancer. My first job as a professional dancer was with Les Grands Ballets in Montreal. I premiered with the company dancing the Waltz of the Flowers in the Nutcracker. The women, they had these beautiful costumes made out of tulle and lace painted like flowers. And the men, well, we had green tights, green vests, and that year we even had little brown hats to make us look like, well, to make us look like stems. That year, everything I did moved from the left side of the stage to the right. All of my entrances came from the left and moved to the right. All of my dances that year started on the left then move to the right. It came from the left to the right. Left. Left. From the right to the left. The last time I danced a nutcracker was in 2008. I was working for Ballet British Columbia at the time when the company suddenly became insolvent, leaving us all without work. My son Finn was 18 months and my wife Natalie was coming back from maternity leave. Well, we live in Vancouver, so I needed a job. It turns out a semi-professional ballet company based out of New Westminster needed a cavalier to dance with their sugar plum fairy. So I took the gig. I had 2 weeks to rehearse that year. Now, normally the second act finishes with the pas de deux, the cavalier solo, the sugar plum solo, and the coda. But because we had such little time, we decided we would do the pas de deux, the sugar plum, and go directly to the coda. So there'd be no cavalier solo. We premiered that year at the Centennial Theatre in North Vancouver. This 16-year-old girl had been performing this particular nutcracker for the last 8 years, and the opportunity for her to dance the Sugar Plum Fairy with a professional dancer was her life's dream. Take her by the waist. You can feel the tool under my hands as she développes to Alice Mode. I move her weight over the block of her point shoe. She fouettes into arabesque, and I take the front of her right hip in my right hand as I tongue back, giving her opposing weight. She moves forward into a penché. I move her over, extending her hamstring. She comes up. I take her by the small of the back. She's nervous, so I move her towards me. Bring her close. We look into the wings and there's 50 children
and a beach.
I take her hand and I take her waist and I walk her halfway across the stage so that she can begin the Sugar Plum solo. Backstage is a fucking circus. There's like 50 children, costumes are everywhere. There's bags of McDonald's, there's shoes. The stage manager's down in the corner. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 parents, all getting ready to marshal the children on for the finale. The Sugar Plum Fairy is almost done, so I go to the corner and I get ready to come on stage to do the coda, and the Cavalier music comes on. Well, I have nothing prepared, so I don't go on stage. And almost instantly, I'm surrounded by the 7 parents, the stage manager, and the 50 children, all telling me, hey guy, you've got the costume on. You're listening to music, you need to go on stage. You're the Cavalier music, why aren't you on there? I tell them I don't have anything prepared, and they say, it doesn't really seem to matter. You're a professional dancer, you should know. On the evening of my premiere as the Prince with Les Combattants, I poisoned myself with a pork stew. We opened our Nutcracker that year in Quebec City, and before we left, I made for myself a delicious pork stew. We returned to Montreal. 5 days later, I ate it. I woke up the next morning violently ill. I called Nathalie, and she came to my apartment and took me to a clinic where we spent 3 hours so that a doctor could tell me I was sick. I went back to Nathalie's house and I slept in her bed and I threw up in her toilet. And we visited in the evenings in between performances. On the 4th day, I came with Nathalie to the theater to take a ballet class, to find my body, to be around people, and to maybe dance in the party scene with was feeling up to it. Halfway through bar, Pierre Lapointe, the rehearsal director, came to me and he told me that David Todd, the other prince, had broken his foot the night before. And that I would be dancing the prince that night. Well, I hadn't slept in a couple of days, and I certainly hadn't eaten. But I was 22. And they asked me to. So I said yes. All of the upstage is in darkness. The party scene is finished. There's a clock sitting right there. I enter in the darkness, and I'm wearing white tights, black boots, and a soldier's uniform, and a mask, painted to look like a nutcracker. Drosselmeyer and Clara are moving downstage in a fall of spotlight. They make their way towards me, and Drosselmeyer takes the mask and the front of the uniform, and he tears it from my body, revealing to Clara a prince, where a nutcracker had once stood. I look at Clara, and I smile. I step forward into fifth position, plie, jump. I bow to Clara, stand up. All of the upstage is in darkness. And there's a clock right there. It's chiming 12 times, and I come in on the 6th to stand in 6th position. Clara and Drosselmeyer are making their way towards me. The spotlight hits my mask and blinds me temporarily, and at that moment, Drosselmeyer tears the mask from me, rolling my weight forward. I look at Clara, I smile, I step up, plie. I bow to Clara, I stand up, I look at Drosselmeyer. I'm in 6th position, and he tears the mask off, throwing my weight forward. I rock back onto my heels, I turn out my left leg, I move through coup de pied, 1st position, 3rd position, 5th position. Feel the weight of my head through my pelvis into my feet. I jump, throwing my right arm around. I go from front to back, from front to back. I go through coup de pied, I slide. I track back, and I feel a piece of marley tape the top of my foot. My knee hits the floor, and at that moment, I realize the weight of my head is swinging back. I stare into the light. The front of my pelvis folds. I reach out with my right hand. I feel cold marley. I touch with the other hand. I look at Clara. I stand up. I bow to Clara. I stand up. I look at Drosselmeyer. I'm in 6th position, and he tears the mask off. I step forward, I plie, I fall. 2 years ago, Nathalie was injured. I look at Drosselmeyer. I stand in 6th position. He tears the mask off. I step forward, She was 16. It's her life stream. I bow. I stand up. I look at Drosselmeyer. I'm in sixth position. Tears. Forward. Weight of my head. Finn was 18 months. I bow. Stand up. When Natalie was on maternity leave. Tear the mask off. Step forward. Weight of the head. Fold. Soft. Clara. Drosselmeyer. Sixth. 12. Stand up. I look at Drosselmeyer. And that night, he smiled at me.